And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, now on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. If you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, people would like us to talk to, topics you'd like us to broach, you can just put it in the comments below here, and we'll be glad to try to get around to those things. Check us here daily. We'll be trying to put up new programming on a regular basis. I try to have something up Monday through Friday, although, as we said yesterday, we had a special on Saturday, a Saturday special. John and I live at the Tea Party. And not only should you subscribe to this YouTube page, because that will help us a lot, but join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. That would be very helpful as well. And, we were talking about the idea of freedom being for everybody. And I think maybe one thing that we may need to do, John, is, and we talked about this yesterday, take the show on the road, because we're starting to see more and more people who maybe didn't grow up with the idea of truth, justice, and the American way, who are kind of coming around now, who were told for years why this country is not for you, it's only for a certain ethnic majority. And Donald Trump showed in his last 3 elections, he outperformed what they said was going to happen on almost every demographic group you can think of: blacks, Hispanics, women. I mean, just as you go down, I remember one of my favorite signs was I saw in front of somebody's house, it said "Dog Owners for Trump." So I just about every demographic, and we talked about this off the air, but I'll tell you, I don't care what people look like. I care what they think like. And they don't have to look like me, but I hope they think like me. The idea of being able to have a constitutional republic, not a democracy. And the left has been very good in trying to make people believe that we live in a democracy, which we don't. Democracy is 50% plus 1 of the vote changes anything, and that's not true. We're a nation of laws. And I think that one thing that we can do on this program and other places is to talk about us being a nation of laws. And you watch a lot of podcasts, and there are a lot of, ethnic minorities now who are now preaching the idea of moral behavior, law-abiding
behavior.
Citizenry, yes.
Yeah, behavior, absolutely. Yeah, quite a few, as a matter of fact, both male and female. There were, in the beginning, when I started watching it months ago, it was almost all male.
Oh, really?
Now there are 2 or 3 females that are now beginning to speak up and say essentially the same thing as the male counterparts, and that is that, folks, the biggest problem that we've got is the person we see in the mirror.
Yes.
We are the problem. It's not the other person. It's not the person who has a different colored skin than we do. It's us. Okay, the family breakdown. There is no family. The crime factor. I mean, even continues today. The amount of these young people that run into these stores and literally wipe out tens of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise in 2 seconds and gone.
Gangbangers.
Well, yeah.
Jitterbug. They call them jitterbugs.
Well, this weekend there were a couple of major shootings again.
Yes.
And whatnot, where a number of people were wounded, a number of people were killed, and so on. So, I mean, there is a complete breakdown within some of that community, and it's unfortunate because now when you see some of the films of the youngest people that have this behavior, I mean, they're behaving like people that are in their 30s and 40s, and they're like 10.
It's what they hear at home.
Evidently, and so on. So, I mean, that, you can't look at that and say that's good behavior. My gosh, folks, that's horrible.
No. And the thing is, humans, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, humans operate better in a structured environment where everyone knows the rules. And you could say things about the 1950s, but the rules were much more clearly drawn back then. Everybody knew what the rules were, and you pretty much obeyed the rules. And I'll default to the way boys were supposed to treat girls. You opened the car door for them, you pulled their chair out for them. You know, they were the quote-unquote weaker sex. The men took care of them. It is what we would call a biblical view of relationships between men and women. but the biblical view of thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not. There's not a lot of wiggle room in there. Thou shalt not kill.
No.
You know.
No.
So when we had a Christian view of morality, the rules were pretty simple, and they were people understood how, and they were pretty fair. It didn't matter what your racial or what your sexual or whatever demographic you represented, you were all supposed to obey by the rules.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, when a child is born, they have an innate sense of right and wrong.
Yes.
From the very beginning, from the time they can begin to conceive things, they know that, if I throw something at my sister or my sibling, that's not going to be good.
No.
All right, and so on. So, you learn those things as you are born and start to be. But then, if you start to see action and hear things that come out of an adult's voice or an adult's action, and it's just the opposite of that, then all of a sudden you begin to see a different picture of, oh, wait a minute, my mom, she curses all the time, she throws things, I go to the store with her and she puts things in her pocket and walks out.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden you look at that and you begin to form this thought in your brain, I think, well, this is acceptable. This is the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to work.
And so here we are now. You see these young kids that are 9, 10 into their teens, and they're actually some of their stuff is as bad as Al Capone.
And see, when I was growing up, I remember back in the saddle again, where you sleep out every night, and the only rule is right. And the guy in the white hat beat the guy in the black hat. The good guy beat the villain. And it didn't always work out that way, but that's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm hoping that the more of these podcasts that come forward and people who can identify more closely. There's a guy that I've been encouraged to try to get on who is a former NFL player and a former wrestler, okay? And he's what they would call a man's man. And he's speaking to an ethnic group that I hope will begin to embrace that message. And it's going to be an uphill battle because we talked yesterday. The left is getting more and more desperate to get done what they want to get done because they see Donald Trump, America First, MAGA-type people unraveling this kind of thing. And all the work that they've done is being tossed to the side. And it's going to be up to us to now get to the kids to say, look, this is the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, you somehow have to change their mindset because, and it's not an across the board thing, folks. It's not every kid, it's not every child, but there's enough of them that they make the news. And that's what you see, and that's what you hear on the news. You see and hear these pictures of these vigilantes that run around and just literally rob everything and do all of this bad stuff, if you will. And it's not everybody. Now, there are some children that I'm sure that are raised right, and they toe the line, and they know good from bad and right from evil.
You watch some of these kids now that are graduating. Our friend Trent Ferguson, who just graduated from USF, and he's on his way to a bright career. You look at some of these kids, the ROTC kids. There is a bright future out there. And speaking about the news, I do want to mention Republic.us again because we're going to start trying to cover some more local news, which we did when we did our live program. And if you live in Highlands County, you know that there's a place called Sparta Road, which is just west of Sebring. I guess it's still inside the Sebring city limits. Mm-hmm. And it is probably the singularly worst intersection in Highlands County. And now they want to really, you just found an article where they want to put in a brand new housing development?
It's evidently been established for quite a while, or at least for a period of time. And now we just went through, and I attended the meeting, you did too, all right, down at the county commission.
Yes.
Where there was a housing development that started out with 28 units, and then the contractor or the developer came along and said, no, I want to put in 40. And there was a massive demonstration by the folks from Sparta Road saying, no, we don't want all this traffic, all right? This is not a good situation. Unfortunately, the county commission decided, no, we're going to vote for that. So they did 4-1, all Four votes for it
Yeah.
and one vote against it.
Arlene Tugg voted
Right.
against it
Right.
because that's her constituents,
Right.
and she promised them she would vote against it. And then she got castigated, well, at least admonished, by Scott Kerouac, telling her she needed to get with the program. And a lot of us think she is with the program. He's the one that's not with the program.
So we just went through that about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then yesterday in the paper, I saw this article. It said Sparta Road developer seeks an extension. Okay, what's this about? Because I thought this was pertaining to the same development that we just listened to. But no, it's not. This one is 365 acres on Sparta Road, okay? And what happened here, the developer, because of the change in the market, the real estate market, where people were buying these 1 acre, 2 acre pieces of property and putting up these mega mansions, no, the market now has taken a downward trend because, number one, I think part of it is the interest rate. But anyhow, because of that, the developer has come back and said, well, I want to change this, the land part, the usage, and we want to make smaller houses and use smaller pieces of ground. Mm-hmm. So that's why he came back and asked for a 10-year extension on this development of this property. But if they were concerned about traffic on Sparta Road being 40 units, I can't imagine how they would, 365 acres, that has to be a big uptick in the number of people, the number of traffic, the
Yes.
number of vehicles, and so on. So how much of a impasse, and obviously, like I said, this is in the city of Sebring. Obviously, the city of Sebring has already approved this, but how can they square a 365-acre housing development and not be that overly concerned about the traffic when they were for a 40 housing development unit?
Well, number one, because the city of Sebring is considering this and not the county.
Yep.
The county looked at this, and they allowed them to, I think it's 3.7 units per acre, which is almost 4 houses on an acre of ground, which is a quarter acre, which is not much.
No.
A few passes with your walking lawnmower, and you're done. Mm-hmm. And now, if their goal is to attract families that want to put a playground, some swings up and a sandbox and some other things for, be able to throw a ball in the backyard and do that kind of stuff, they're going to want bigger lots. And the other thing is that you got to decide what kind of people you want to come in. We're here in Avon Park, and there was a city manager here in Avon Park named C.B. Shirey. And the city council, and this has been more than a decade ago, okay, maybe 15 years, maybe 20. And they were putting in all these quote-unquote affordable housing units. And CB said, look, if you make it cheap to live here, only cheap people will live here. Mm-hmm. My dear friend, the late Steve Roberts, back in the 1990s asked, where in Avon Park would you build $1 million home? And the answer is that there was no place. There was no upscale neighborhood where $1 million home would go in and be well among all the other $1 million homes or high dollar homes. So if you want higher end people to move into Highlands County, you have to give them a place to live. Higher end mm-hmm. people are not going to want to live in a little concrete block house.
No.
Who's going to want? I mean, people who have to live there or a mobile home will live there. The workers, the service personnel, the waitresses and the store clerks and the people like that will live there. But you have to have some place for the people who own the stores.
Right.
Okay. Some people who own the manufacturing company. People who take their boat out to the coast on the weekend and enjoy life and pay those high dollar taxes for the things that the city council, the county commission, the school board wants to do.
Well, and I think, and rightfully so, you have to have a kind of a long view of where you want your community to be in 20 years, mm-hmm. 30 years. Where do you want it to be? How condensed do you want it to be? How impacted do you want it to be by traffic, by housing development, and so on? So you have to start taking a look at that and saying, do we want to become the next Orlando? Okay, not that you're going to have Disney World, but you're going to be the next Orlando where you're going to have stack 'em and pack 'em houses and these huge developments, and so on. So I understand why the founding fathers, or the founders, if you will, and the communities take a look at that and say, okay, we have to have some long-term vision of where we want this to be, and so on. Do you want it to be a county of 500,000 people, or do you want to keep it to less than 200,000 people? And so how do you structure that, and so on? So I think that was one of the disappointments for the people that were promoting and ones that didn't want that 40-unit thing built when it was voted. After they had a massive group of people there to protest, if you will, not protest physically, but just protest,
No, yeah,
speaking up against it, all right? And yet the founding fathers, if you will, of the county said, no, we'll vote for this 4-1.
Well, the thing is this, is we have a method to do that. How much attention they pay to it is another question entirely. When I first came to Highlands County in the middle 1980s, there was a movement which had just started. It was called the Comprehensive Land Use Management Plan. Mm-hmm. And your job, and I used to call it the Consultant Subsidy Act, what you do is you had your county, you had your zoning, you figured out where are you going to put the industry, where are you going to put business, where are you going to put high-density housing, middle-density housing, low-density housing here in Highlands County, agriculture, where all this was going to go, and you planned your county out so that you kind of knew, because different counties have different needs. Sarasota County is different from Highlands County. Highlands County is different from Orange County, which is Orlando. It's different from Duval County, which is Jacksonville. But it's also different from Glades County, which is a lot of swampland. Mm-hmm. I mean, every county in Highlands, in the state of Florida, has its own needs and own wants and own. It's already got infrastructure. It's already got roads set up. It's got lakes. It's got high areas and low areas. It's got developing areas, undeveloping areas. I mean, there's all different cities. So they already have some things that are. So what they wanted to do now is to plan for that. I don't know how much of the comprehensive land use management plan is paid attention to.
I don't know, but I would think that at some point, though, you have to say, what kind of community do we want to be? And again, yes. I go by the population, because the population equates into just about everything: the number of vehicles, the number of houses, the number of stores, the number of retail establishments. So it plays into everything when you're talking about how do you want the county, if you will, to expand. And we're at roughly now, I think, about 105,000 in the county.
Yes,
I think that's
give
where it
or
is.
take, yeah.
And it's fluctuated since I came here. It fluctuated between like 95 and 100. Now it's crept up to 105. And you can see in driving around, yes, there are some, like this structure here on Sparta Road, 365 acres. But a lot of what's being developed today is one house at a time. A contractor will come on, he'll buy a lot, put up a house. Move a half mile down the road, he buys a lot and puts up a house, or he might put up 2 houses, and so on. So you've got that ongoing thing, and I think those houses, I don't know the exact price, but I'm going to pick a number. I'm going to say something less than, say, 200,000, maybe 175 or whatever, and so on. But how many $1 million, $750,000 homes are you going to have in your community, and what kind of community is that going to be?
Yes. And the thing is this is for the second time I've seen this. There has been a concern over how many mobile homes are vetted in Highlands County. Mm-hmm. Back in the 1990s, they had, I think, 250,000 mobile homes vetted in Highlands County, and they went through an exercise where they said, look, you can't just have lines on paper. If you're not developing this mobile home park by date certain, then that land goes back to ag, and you'll have to bring it back before us. And now this thing that this guy wants to do on Sparta Road, it appears to me that it is different enough from what was approved. If I was a Sebring City Council member, I'd say, look, if you want that, you're going to have to bring that back before us, and we're going to have to look at it, and we're going to have to go through the whole exercise again, because there needs to be a traffic study done. There needs to be a water use study done. There needs to be all kinds of things that you have to use to justify that number of units that you want to put on. Now, I just got a story that Donald Trump has a new tax cut plan that would save the average tax return about $3,700, $3,800, which is quite a good savings, and would put more money in people's pockets, so they might be more than willing to buy a larger house like this.
Well, it said here, the first amended agreement states the development of the property will have no more than 2.53 residential units per acre for the units and have an overall density of no more than 2.8 residential units per acre for the entire property, considering the addition of independent assisted living facility, which is going to be part of it, by the way, all right? The new, if you will, the new structures would be 42 single-family lots, 2 single-family attached townhouse communities with a maximum of 193 dwellings, 689 single-family units on 50-foot wide lots. That's got to be 50-foot wide. That's pretty small.
Let me
That's
tell you
very
something.
small.
I'll tell you this, okay? If you drive down Highway 27 and you look at a semi-truck that passes you, a big box semi-truck,
Yep.
a lot of times on the back of it you will see 53 feet, which is as long as that semi-truck is.
Right.
So that is 3 feet longer than that lot.
Right. I mean, my lot is 80 by 115, and that's the smallest piece of property I've ever owned.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a tiny chunk of property.
Yes, absolutely. So anyhow, it'll be interesting to see. I assume the city will probably go along with this change, all right?
I hope not.
And it did say that they were going to have, the property will have one access road off of Sparta Road and one access road off of Basage, Bassage
Bassage.
Road.
That's
Bassage Road?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are and I guess the one that they were debating with 40 units was only going to have one access road in and out, from what I thought I understood.
They highlight that as a benefit, because they say, well, anybody who pulls in there should arguably live there, be going to visit somebody who lives there. They won't be cutting through, and the residents say, oh, well, good, people won't be cutting through our development, and so that is held up as a benefit. I'm not at all sure that if a bunch of people want to get in or get out, that's necessarily a benefit.
Well, and 28, 40 houses is not very many. I mean, when you look at it, that is not very many houses. So that's
For that size of property.
for that size property, yes, right, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. This is the first. I didn't know that this development was even in the works. Obviously, it has been in the works for a while now. So it'll be interesting to see if the city allows this change in land usage to be different than what was originally approved.
Well, I'll tell you, this Republic.us is oriented towards getting more local news. And since I stepped away from the radio in May of 2024, I have not covered city council, county commission, school board meetings the way I had in the past, because that is quite a bit of effort, okay?
Oh, yeah.
It's quite a bit of effort to do that. But I've decided now that because it is so hard to get news, and it's because there is such a dearth of news around, you see some things. There's some Facebook platforms which has, if there's a car crash, they take pictures of the car crash. There's some crusading type of sites that set their sights on a city council or a school board and look into those and follow those meetings closely. And it's getting back to the olden days where you had a Republican and a Democrat newspaper in the same town, and the Republicans all bought one paper and the Democrats all bought the other paper. I think it's time we're going to see more citizen journalism, and I am going to try to we'll try to cover more local things here, and I'm going to try to cover more, start to do Republic, and I'm getting in as a contributor there. One of the nice things in Republic is they claim that they're going to have easy ways for you to get in touch with city council members, school board members, county commissioners, your state representatives, whether it's your federal representatives, where there's names and phone numbers and people you can talk to, because it's time now. If we don't get involved now, we're going to be in real trouble. And it's going to be time, as we heard at the Republican meeting, for citizens to begin to pick what they want to cover and to begin to cover it and to look into it. Like, I was advised today that the school board, which is the superintendent of schools, has really stepped up the numbers of workshops that they have for school board members. Now, most of these school board members have day jobs. Some of them are retired, but most of them have day jobs. And it appears to some people that the administration is trying to wear the board out by just piling information on top of information on top of information. And I saw that when I was on the Health Education Committee, which was the Sex Education Committee. The way they piled information on you to try to hide things in plain sight. There's so much information you can't get it all. And so we're going to try to cover some of these things and get some audio and some video on some of the things that happen at these board meetings so residents can be more informed. But we can't do it by ourselves, you know. And I've tried at the Tea Party meeting, because arguably most of those people are a little bit more politically plugged in. They read more, they listen more, they watch more, so they're a little bit better informed. So I'm trying to get some of them, and I'll reach out to the people in the audience now, where you can send us private messages through our Facebook page. I have the Barry Foster Show Facebook page, and also started a Barry Foster Show group, which will be for people to kind of discuss issues and talk about the things that they want to talk about. But it's really going to be kind of up to us now to begin to delve into this. And Donald Trump on Monday announcing that he's going to try to do away with mail-in ballots right before the midterms. These midterms are going to be very important elections as well.
Huge, because it'll set the tenor for what happens the last 2 years. Because
Federally.
if on the federal side, because if the Republicans do not retain the House and or the Senate, then the second 2 years of Donald Trump is going to be meaningless.
Yeah.
Because they'll allow him to do nothing.
And so that's going to mean that we'll have to talk to our friends in the great industrialized North, spread information about this program and other programs like it around, but also we're going to have a new governor.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know,
Yep.
And our two representatives here will be up, but other representatives as well to determine how the Florida legislature goes. We also have 3 school board members and 2 county commissioners that are going to be up for election. The midterms is a lot more than what happens in Congress, although as you pointed out, what happens in Congress is going to be very important.
It's going to be very important because all of the things that the Trump administration is putting forth as far as things they either have accomplished or planning to accomplish to, I think, make the country better, all right, make it more efficient, make it more economical, make it more, worthy for the people, the citizens, in order to get benefit from changes that they're making either in the budget or whatever other issues that they're putting forward. So if that doesn't happen, again, the Democrats have already said on day one, if they win the House, here comes the impeachment papers.
Another
on day one,
impeachment, yes.
On day one, which means that Trump will be tied up forever for the last 2 years, which is what they want, and be able to get very little accomplished, and so on. So that's why, folks, we cannot express strongly enough how important, being involved in the midterm elections and actually making sure that you and your friends and anybody else votes, because it's going to be critical in order to keep this whole thing going forward. If you like what you see, you want to see it for 4 years, not 2 years.
And that's why it's important for people who believe in the Republic and who believe in small government and lower taxes get involved in this, regardless of race, creed, color, national origin. The demographics of who you are and what you look like are much more secondary to what you believe, okay? And I saw a Facebook a video, and anymore it's really hard to tell the things that are staged and the things that are real.
Especially with the advent of AI.
Oh yeah, but they had this young gal on who was talking about how it was Sunday, and she asked her husband where they wanted to go out and eat on Sunday. And he says, well, we may want to start cutting back a little bit because we're not going to be getting as much money in our check. and she says Trump's got elected, that the checks that they were getting are going to go down, and they might have to go out and actually get a job.
Wow.
And get a job, and how unfair that was, because they had time they wanted to spend with their friends, with their kids, and you shouldn't have to work unless, of course, you want to, but you shouldn't have to work because the government should just be paying for you to kind of do what you want. And you watch this, and my first idea was, is this actually real? Is this a person who really believes this? And in your heart of hearts, you think, well, maybe they believe this, and maybe they have no idea where the government money comes from, and it's going to be an educational process to people who have to go out, because the government doesn't make anything. The only way they get money is taking it from people and giving it to other people,
Right. Well, it's take so-called from the rich and give to the poor, but it's a transfer of wealth, is what it is. Right?
Exactly.
And it's not anything that somebody earned. It's something that somebody was given. And unfortunately, in this day and age, when you hold up a sign that says free, okay, that's the magic word. That's the magic word for people, and it's unfortunate.
And because we find out that things from the government are not free, okay? You pay for it in other ways, and one of the big things that they're trying to unravel now is they say, well, we just tax business. And well, when you tax business, they add it onto the price of the goods that you pay. So if you charge more for, if you charge the tax the candy bar company, okay, they're going to add to the price of the candy bar. So you tax the company, but you're going to end up paying it, and it's an educational process that needs to go on, and we need to look at that. And we also, I came across the story that Donald Trump had said that he was going to try to do away with mail-in ballots. The very first thing I did was I went and started to do an internet search to see if that was true, and I found the same story on Yahoo, on Reuters, on Newsweek. Okay, that's a real story. Mm-hmm. Okay, I came across another story that said that Bernie Sanders had gotten $44 billion in 1 month from USAID, and so I went and I researched that story. Well, I found out that during 1 month of his campaign, he raised that much money, but no, it did not come from USAID. Mm-hmm. And the site, it was called America's Last Stand, I think. That site is a satire site. They put wrong information up there, and they make us believe. So when you see something and it looks like a story that you're really interested in, the first thing you have to do is begin to look for do an internet search and find locations that arguably, and it's the best when you can find liberal organizations mm-hmm. that have that story,
right,
because they're not happy about it. So you have to be able to do your own research so that you don't look like an idiot when they say so-and-so happened and it really didn't happen.
No. Well, and again, they try to put out false flags about things to get you all riled up. And you're right, if you don't back check it somehow, all right, to find out whether it's true, you could be going down a rabbit hole.
And they're going to, as the midterm comes up, you're going to find more and more of this information about some of the best candidates. They're going to put out a bunch of smoke out there, and to try to. Well, you heard about this guy. In fact, we had a back and forth with a guy who said, "Why do you like Trump? How can you possibly like Trump? He's a convicted pedophile." I said, "No, it's not even true. That's not even. I don't know I don't even know where you got that information." I said, "Please." And when I see some of these stories that they put up, I said, "Send me a link on that, or do you have video of him saying that? Because I'd like to see that." And then usually it goes quiet. But we have to do our own research.
Well, the other thing I mentioned it briefly just a little bit ago, but you have to be concerned with is stuff that's AI generated.
Oh my gosh!
Because that could be so nefarious. They can put a video of you out there, will be you. It'll look like you. It'll sound like you. It'll be your voice, and so on. So I think unfortunately, it's like the internet. There's good and bad with the internet. I think there's going to be a lot of good and a lot of bad connected with AI.
You have to really, really watch.
You know, it's the old saying: if it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true.
It probably is.
That's right.
That's
Absolutely.
Right.
So yes, just briefly, I want to touch on something
sure. Go
because
ahead.
unfortunately this weekend we had here in Florida, I think it was on I-75, where this illegal who got a CDL license in California, of course, all right, decided to make a U-turn on I-75 through the median strip.
Yes,
and
I saw
unfortunately, 3 people lost their life because he never cleared the road and his car was barreling along at 70 miles an hour.
Drove right up under the trailer.
Right under, and all 3 of them were killed instantly. But here's another sign, and this is where Trump, when he brought up here a while back, that if you do not have, and they've already revoked a number of CDL licenses with people that cannot speak or read English, which is, thank goodness. Now, and there was a co-driver with this guy, too. Somebody sitting in the cab, not sleeping, sitting in the cab next to him.
Yes.
That watched him make this illegal turn. So he had 2 people that, as far as I'm concerned, are culpable in this instance, but now 3 people have lost their lives because of some unbelievably stupid thing to do. I think maybe once or twice in my life where something happened, I had to make a U-turn on a medium strip on a highway. I know you're not supposed to do it, but I had to do it because something was happening, okay?
Were you driving a semi-truck with a 53-foot
no,
long
I was
trailer?
not. No, I was driving a
See,
a
that's the
little car.
thing.
I know. Yes.
On more than one occasion, I have driven and gotten off the ramp, gone across the bridge, gotten on the other ramp, and gone. And
Yes.
he could have done that.
That's what he should have done,
You know,
yes.
but he thought he was just going to turn right around, and there was a little place between the Armco where he could turn, and he jackknifed the truck. You know,
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, it's very sad, a very sad story. But again, it proves, and to me, and somebody in California has to be culpable for this. I don't care whether you go to the transportation department or whoever, because we just heard, here was a while back, and was it here in Florida, where those people were handing out and selling CDL licenses
Yes.
to people that, was it here in Florida?
he was here in Florida.
So, I mean, it shows you that there's corruption within the system. And unbelievable that somebody would think this was okay to do, to give this to somebody who shouldn't be here to begin with. And this guy came across in 2018.
They didn't care.
So he's been here for 7 years.
Yes.
7 years he's been here. And California obviously just hands out CDL licenses like candy, or they sell them, whichever.
Well, we had a story in the local paper here, and this has been more than 10 years ago, of a guy who interviewed a guy who'd been living in the United States illegally for 50 years.
Wow.
And he did not speak a word of English. They had to have an interpreter there. Now, if I lived in Kathmandu, you know, if I lived in some foreign land, if I lived in Mexico City, okay? If I lived in Mexico City for 50 years, I would be able to speak some Spanish.
I would
You
think
know?
so, yes.
Yeah, out of self-defense, you got to at least say, you know, ¿Dónde están los baños? Which is, where are the bathrooms? You know, which, by the way, I've actually said to somebody in Orlando one time. I said, where are the bathrooms? She said, no English. I said, ¿Dónde están los baños? And she was a little bit shocked. You know, I said, hombre. You know, I pointed at me like, hombre baños. You know, men bathroom. He says, no public, no public. I said, okay. So you do speak no public,
Right,
you know? So, but I mean, you see this, and again, I would urge you to go back to the Nicholas Softy Fair interview that we did, or just go to the Federation for American Immigration Reform. If you can report illegals, we need to get as many illegals out of the country as humanly possible.
And I think they're working, Tom Holman, I think, and his people are working. They're really now, if you look at some of the latest places that they're going to, they're going into all kinds of locations nowadays because these folks are anywhere and everywhere as far as where they're hanging out, where they're
Right.
residing, whatever they're doing. So I think there's many, many of these locations that you would look at it and say, well, there's no way that there's illegal people, and no, there are.
Oh, yes.
There are, and so on. And you know, the one thing that is really pointed out, and that is that how many of these businesses have hired these folks. We know why they hire most of them all the time. because they're cheaper
Cheap.
labor. And they hired them for the cheaper labor. The heck with the consequences of them being here, not even knowing whether or not these folks had any kind of a criminal background. All right, they were here illegally, but if they also had a criminal background, then you're complicit in them still being here and evading capture or whatever. But the number of people that are protesting this, absolutely, they've never been impacted by this in their life. Otherwise, they wouldn't be out there screaming and hollering.
And the thing is that, to be honest, there are some people who have illegal documentation that looks really, really real. Okay, I get it. And so some of these businesses may believe that they have somebody who's got a green card or has whatever documentation that they need. And there's been when I was working at the radio station, I did a story about a guy in Wauchula that was making illegal documentation, and he had all the laminating machines and all that kind of stuff. No, you didn't win. Had all the stuff, and he said, well, he was making it for his friends so they could work in the country. You know, I mean, he was very upfront about it.
It seemed to me like going back a few years, and this may be going back maybe, 10 years, but didn't we have, was either in, I thought it was either in Wauchula or someplace, there was a fellow they caught that was printing and
Yes.
and distributing and selling these various forms of documentation,
Absolutely,
which were not good.
Yeah, and from the early 1990s, I remember trying to get something done about that, and there was this. I don't know if it still exists or not. There was an organization called VDARE. It's V as in Virginia, DARE, D-A-R-E, VDARE.com, and it was all these stories about illegals and things that had happened. It was named after Virginia Dare, which was the first baby born in the New World by the new settlers. Okay, and it was called VDARE, and they said that many times they all use the same Social Security number. The Social Security number the Social Security Administration should be able to ferret this out, because if you get 100 people, if you get 100 different places that are reporting the same Social Security number, there should be a red flag someplace.
Well, I don't know if you saw Trump did a mini press conference with, I think, Stephen Miller, I'm not sure, last week, where he talked about Social Security and how they're trying to reform Social Security. But again, he mentioned that, and I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was in excess of 1 million people that are collecting Social Security that are like 150 years old or older.
It started with people that are 110, and there was one that was over 300 years old.
And collecting.
And they were collecting, and we had, is it Jasmine Crockett? There was an elected official that was collecting Social Security for their grandmother who had passed away 12 years ago. And the checks just keep coming, and they kept signing, for them, and she says, well, Social Security's fault, they should have known. And I don't know if she's ever going to be prosecuted for that or not. But I mean, I'm hoping that as Trump gets rid of the illegal people that are not supposed to be on this, because as they came across the border, apparently the Biden administration gave them Social Security numbers.
Well, I also see there a little bit ago that Marco Rubio has revoked the student visa of 6,000 foreign students in the United States because they've been either involved in these demonstrations or done other things that are against the law, if you will, for people that are here on student visas. So we've got a huge number of Chinese students in this country.
Yes.
Chinese students. And some of them have reported and said, yes, I have to report back what I've learned in this country to the Chinese Communist Party.
There was a Chinese student who was taken to court, and I don't know if he was deported. I think he was deported because he was taking pictures down around the Key West Naval Base in restricted zones. And he was out there, and they finally, I think, as I remember the story, they caught him in a boat. He was out there taking pictures, and they, what are you doing? And they found out what he was doing, and it was going back to China. So yeah, it's going to be, and it's going to be up to him. I was not alive during World War II. I think maybe you were alive during World War II.
I was for about 5 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Americans were. I had a guy who used to call me on the talk show, who remembered when he was a kid, that they had found a set of footprints that came out of the water that went along the beach, and they started looking for who left those footprints, because they wanted to make sure that they weren't up to no good. You just don't come out of the water for no good reason. So at any rate, it's going to be up to us to begin to try to recoup the country, try to put up they've sealed the southern borders. They don't say much about the northern borders, and I think that is as important, if not more important.
Yeah, well, it's obvious that we've got a major problem. This country has been infiltrated by so many bad characters, and conceptually we have practically zero. Now I know they're catching up to it, like the 6,000 that Marco Rubio just talked about. They're catching up to some of this, but I mean there are so many people here that are nefarious actors in this country that are here to do one thing: do us harm. And it's amazing that we have not had any really dramatic things like 9/11 happen again.
Is that the fifth column? Is that what they called it, the fifth column? I think it was called the fifth column. It might have been the third column.
But I mean, there are so many people that have been allowed to get into this country and stay here and do whatever they're doing, and we have yet to catch up with them, or if we know about it, we've yet to do anything about it. I think they're beginning. I think they've started with the sending back the illegals that are here, the ones who committed crime or whatever, and now this thing taking on the student thing and so on. But the colleges have also, they've strictly advocated any control over who comes, as long as they're willing to send them the money for the so-called education. They could care less where you come from, what you're here for, and what your whole purpose is.
We've got a lot accomplished. There's a lot to go.
There's a lot to go, yes. That's why we need 4 years, not 2 years.
Amen.
4 years, not 2.
We're going to be ramping up about the midterms here as it comes along. You have been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, recorded here at the Ridge Flora Studios located in the city of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. If you have thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for the program, you just put them in the comments below, and please subscribe. Doesn't cost a dime to subscribe. All you just hit the subscribe button, and you're in. And subscribe to our Barry Foster Show Facebook and Instagram page as well, as we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way. This is Barry Foster and John Larsen, and we'll see you next time.